Welcome to another edition of RCE. Again, this is Brock Palin. I have again Jeff Squires from Cisco Systems and the Open MPI project. Jeff, once again, thank you for the show.
Woo! Yes, glad to be here. It's always fun to do.
Yeah, so SC is only about a month away. Both Jeff and I will be there. Jeff, you'll be hanging around the Cisco booth or random other MPI partner booths?
Yeah, I'll be hanging around the Cisco booth quite a bit. A couple of other MPI things. There's an MPI forum BOF and an Open MPI BOF. But generally, I'll be hanging around the corporate booth because who pays my paycheck?
Yeah, I don't have a booth. One of the benefits of working for a university that does not have a booth. I'll just be walking around, but this year we have a limited number of RCE t-shirts. So if you see one of us and we have shirts still and you say you like the show, we've got a t-shirt for you. So if you want a nice RCE t-shirt, say hi to one of us.
Collector's edition.
Yes. Limited quantity is keyword.
That's right.
Also, you can find the RCE online at rce-cast.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, where I tweet new shows when they come out, at Brock Palin, all one word. And you can find all those linked off of the RCE site, including Jeff's blog.
That's right. And Cisco is we just launched our new blog site, which we're very pleased with, because I think we were using the best blogging platform of about 1999 or so, and now we actually are using some modern stuff, and it's just so much better. But my Twitter is just J Squires, and you'll see that one of the people I follow is our guest today.
Yes, actually, I follow our guest today too. Now, I'm hoping with our guest today we're not going to end up into some sort of buzzword bingo. It's an evolving section of our industry. So who we have with us today is Nicole Hemsoth of HPC in the Cloud, and so I'll let Nicole introduce herself and what she actually does with HPC in the Cloud. Nicole?
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me on. I love your tweets, by the way. I am on Twitter at HPC in the Cloud. Pretty easy to figure out. So it's interesting that you said the word buzzword, because even though I'm working with a publication called HPC in the Cloud, I do also believe that it's something of a buzzword. I believe that it's misused quite often. It's a marketing term. However, there are some really great use cases that we do try to cover on HPC in the Cloud, demonstrating strong uses of a virtualized environment for HPC applications. Now, our publication, we are a sister publication of HPC Wire, and they were covering cloud computing for some time, and it generated a ton of interest, enough so that they felt the need to spawn a new publication out of it. So that's sort of our roots.
Yeah, it's interesting because over on the industry side of HPC kinds of things, I do hear people talk about cloud quite a bit. It's still eschewed quite a bit by many academics and researchers by saying, that's just something that's going to rob me of performance. But I have to say, it is gaining some non-zero traction on the industry side for people who find very practical uses, and it fits very well in their environment. So I wonder, Nicole, could you give us some of what are the common or better definitions of HPC in the cloud?
To be honest with you, I think if we're talking about HPC specifically, the best definition for cloud is simply defined by on-demand resources. So it's not just a VMware type definition of cloud computing that we're talking about. It's this idea that you have capacity whenever you need it on a pay-as-you-go basis. I think the pay-as-you-go and the on-demand are two of the most important components here. And so when the publication first launched, I went through this whole identity crisis. How do I define for the publication what cloud computing is? Do I only stick with that which is virtual? Do I carry over things from grid, since after all this is all a carryover from grid? So right now I'm just sort of taking the approach that if it's on demand, if it's off-site, then it's cloud to me. Now, lots of people could take issue with that definition. I think if there's any good definition, it's the NIST definition. But that one, too, sort of lets some things slip through the cracks.
And what is that definition that's not complete?
The NIST definition is pretty comprehensive, and it does invoke some of the virtualized environment as critical. I don't necessarily believe that it has to be all virtualized, again, in the VMware type definition, the commercial mainstream definition. On-demand companies providing HPC on demand are, to me, cloud. Some of them call themselves cloud, some of them don't. But the fact is it falls into that definition of being available whenever you need it on a pay-as-you-go basis, which makes it ideal for those bursty demands, which to me seems like a really great use case for cloud right now. For a lot of HPC users, they are not moving every aspect of everything they're doing into the cloud, okay? This is being used when they've overexceeded their cluster capacity. So it's not an across-the-board thing. It's not like HPC is all moving into the cloud. I think all of you know what problems there are with this. I think that in the next few years, however, some of those issues will be mitigated.
So another use case scenario, a logical extension of what you said, I think, is that I have no HPC capability at all, but maybe 3 times a year or 10 times a year, I have a big honking job that I need to do, and I can just farm it out to somebody. Would that be considered the same kind of classification?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's one of the best use cases I've seen, and the most prominent type of case that I've seen for large-scale enterprise and even research centers using cloud resources. It's certainly the workload that they're moving into the cloud. However, you do want to define it, whether it's just an on-demand resource or if it's EC2, for instance. It's just when they've kind of hit their maximum capacity, they need to take a certain workload that is not maybe security dependent, and then offload that into the cloud. That's the most common use case that I've seen from the range of companies that I've talked to and researchers for that matter.
So you've talked about what cloud's good for, this bursting in demand, this excess demand, or I think it would also work for a small researcher who pretty much almost never does anything but needs to do some computation every now and then. What do you see, though, as where people are using cloud for HPC when they really shouldn't be? What's the biggest case not to use cloud in some situations?
That's an interesting question. So there are certainly lots of HPC applications that have no business being in the cloud, of course, because they rely on that fast communication, right? They require it. And so usually the people that make that mistake, and it is a mistake, they are only doing it because they don't have the financial resources to buy their own cluster, and so they think that they can push some of these things out into EC2. And they do, they can do that. It's just the performance difference is pretty massive, from what I understand.
So you mentioned EC2 in there. EC2 is a virtualized environment. What about some of these, I don't know if you call them cloud providers, but HPC as a service, where it's actually a hardware provider? It's not a virtualized OS. You put your workload over there, they run it, you get the results back. In that case, it should just look like you're running on hardware. Is that happening much? Do you consider that HPC in the cloud or not?
I consider that HPC in the cloud, and that's where that definition issue becomes pretty sticky. And this is nothing new. Certainly, renting out time on a supercomputer or a large cluster is absolutely nothing new. But now that there's this marketing buzz phrase to slap on it, the ecosystem has sort of changed, and some companies have adopted it, others haven't. HPC on-demand companies, I've talked to several of them in the past. The major providers, so you've got Penguin, you have a company called Savicor. I was just at an event last week sponsored by R Systems. They're a Champaign-Urbana-based HPC as a service provider. They have a much easier sell for their customers, let's put it that way, because they have